Station 2 is Insect and Forest Health Issues, and it's presented by Linda Williams, Forest Health Specialist from the Wisconsin DNR. The information covered will include oak wilt management and control, forest management during spongy moth outbreaks, two-line chestnut borer, the latest updates on emerald ash borer, and pine issues.
I'm Linda Williams. I'm the DNR Forest Health Specialist. I cover kind of northeastern, north central part of the state right now, from Iron and Price counties all the way east over here to Marinette County. For quite a number of years I was located out of the Green Bay office, so some of you may have known me from there. I have transferred north now. I'm up in the Woodruff office now. And this year I will have been with the DNR for 25 years. Wow. So I have seen a number of you before at meetings. So we're going to talk about pine at this site, a few pine issues, and then we're going to move up. We're going to talk a little bit about oak wilt, and then we're going to go over and talk about spongy moth and mention of emerald ash borer. So we got your doom and gloom getting you off to a good start right here this morning. So starting out with a few pine things. Last year was a dry, droughty year, and there were areas of the state where we had pine that were severely impacted by that drought, to the point that they were being attacked by some of our native insects. So we have white-spotted sawyer, and I'll pass this around. This is a longhorn beetle that attacks pines that are under stress, and this beetle was active especially in red pine, but it can also attack white pine, jack pine, balsam fir, spruce. It can attack any of those if they're under stress. Last year the drought was a significant stress. In our red pine, we also saw bark beetles, our Ips pine engraver bark beetle, and these are very small. And again, I'll pass this around, but this is a nickel to show you these little tiny holes, which are the exit holes of this bark beetle. They're small, but the bark beetles were attacking these trees that are under stress and killing some of them. So you may have had some pine that started to decline last year. Maybe they did die last year, maybe they didn't. Maybe some of them died this spring. We're seeing that because of the drought. It was long enough that these insects were able to start attacking those trees. The other thing that we started seeing last year because of the stress caused by the drought was diplodia attacking some of these trees. Now, diplodia is a fungal disease. It's a needle disease, but it can also be a shoot blight. This picture that I'm going to send around is a hand lens showing the little bumps on this needle. These are the fruiting bodies. These little dark bumps are the fruiting bodies of diplodia. And so it is a needle disease, but it's also a shoot blight. I have this fabulous sample. I just stopped along the drive about a mile from here to grab a sample, because I knew I couldn't reach most of his branches. I walked up to a tree and I'm like, well, I couldn't really see if that was going to be a good sample. I put my pole pruner up there and dropped this sample. This is fabulous. So we have all of these branch tips are dead from diplodia. So this diplodia fungus is killing these branch tips before they can even grow to a full needle length. Some of them are very, very small before they were killed. And the stress that these trees were under last year allowed diplodia to get into them last year, and then this year they're still a little bit stressed, but we had so much moisture this spring that actually promoted this fungus as well, and we're just seeing a lot of branch tip mortality. Now, on a tree this size, it's no big deal. They can probably get through a year or two of severe damage like this, where almost every branch tip is killed. But on a smaller tree, this is going to be a huge setback for those trees. It'll put them under additional stress, and then bark beetles and our longhorn beetles can continue to attack them. So watch for continued mortality in your pines. How many of you have red pine on your property? Ooh, quite a few. Okay, all right. Watch for that, because trees don't recover instantaneously from stressors. So even though it was dry last year and they were stressed, and then we had a bunch of rainfall this year, it doesn't mean they have totally recovered. And this is a good example of, these trees you might be thinking there's plenty of moisture, they're in good shape, but there's stuff going on that is stressing them out. The next thing I wanted to talk about with pine, we have two issues that can cause mortality pockets in pine, where you get some pine starting to die and then it moves outwards from there, killing trees as it goes. Slowly but surely. Neither of these are particularly fast, but we have HRD, which is heterobasidian root disease, and we have red pine pocket mortality. And both of those things have a root disease component that is what allows them to continue to spread underground from tree to tree to tree and eventually kill trees in a pocket type area. We have a couple different insects that can introduce the red pine pocket mortality disease, and I'll pass this one around. I looked around for examples of this on his trees, and these trees are, they're a touch too healthy, unfortunately. So turpentine beetles will attack near the base, and they'll create a little pitch tube. There is a little blob of pitch right here. It doesn't look like much, but when you get larvae like this boring around under the bark of the tree, right at the base of the tree, that can cause a lot of stress to those trees. Those larvae, or the adult beetles, I'm sorry, they can introduce a root disease called leptographium. This is the root disease associated with red pine pocket mortality. If you're going to get a pocket of mortality in your pine, this is the disease you want. You don't want HRD, which is the heterobasidian root disease. So this one, leptographium, associated with red pine pocket mortality, and it can continue to spread through connected root systems, and all of these red pine would be heavily root grafted to each other. So it can just spread through the root system from one tree to the next, slowly. It only moves about 3 feet a year or so, but it would eventually kill, if this tree was dying from leptographium root disease, it would eventually move through the root system and start killing that tree, and then that tree, and it would just move outwards from there. And this particular issue is specific to red pine, so the red pine pocket mortality is specific to red pine. If you had a white pine growing in the middle here, it wouldn't be impacted, which is really great. But there's the other pocket disease, heterobasidian root disease, and that one is, where am I? There we go. That one is the far worse disease to have. This is a fruiting body of heterobasidian root disease. They'll grow right at the base of the trees. And so this is quite a close-up picture of that fruiting body. They'll grow right at the base of the tree, and if you're going to look for those, you actually need to pull the duff layer back from the base of the tree to be able to look for those fruiting bodies. They could be smaller, like this, a stage that we call popcorn. It's a little bigger than a popcorn kernel, but it sort of looks like popcorn. Those will be found right at the very base of the tree. They can be even just under that duff layer, that soil line around the tree. So you have to pull back the base to look for those. But it's a good idea to check for those if you have a pocket of dying red pine, because this one's a bad one to have. Heterobasidian root disease can kill not only red pine, but white pine, jack pine, balsam fir, spruce, tamarack, and although it can kill all of our conifers, it can also grow on some of our hardwoods. Doesn't kill them, just slows them down a little bit, but it can grow on those hardwoods. So heterobasidian root disease is a bad one to have if that's the one that you have killing your trees. So with that one, we don't have any treatment once you have it. Once you have it, you have it, and you have it for decades, and you probably won't be able to grow pine on that site again. So, this particular disease, there's no cure, there's no way to get it off your site, but there are some preventative measures. If you are doing a timber sale, and you know that you're relatively close to a known pocket of heterobasidian root disease, like within 25 miles, and there's an online map that you can look up exactly where your property is compared to the known locations. If you're close, it is recommended that you do stump treatments when you do a thinning. And that stump treatment would be a product that is sprayed onto the stump to prevent spores from this fungus from landing on that stump and growing. So one of the products that can be used is Cellutreat, and that's a borate product. And you spray that on the stump, and then if spores land on that stump, they can't grow. The other product is a biological product. It's called Rot Stop C, and it's the fungal spores of Flebiopsis gigantea, a different decay fungus that does not kill trees, but it will decay the wood. And you spray that on the stump, it infests the stump, and then if the spores of heterobasidian root disease land on that stump, they can't compete. They're a little bit wimpy, other than the fact that, you know, once they get into a tree, they can kill nearby trees. So heterobasidian root disease is by far the one that you don't want if you're going to have a pocket of dying red pine on your property. So how do you know which one you have? If you look at the base of the trees and pull back that duff layer and you're not finding any of those fruiting bodies like I just sent around pictures of, if you're not finding those, it doesn't necessarily mean you don't have HRD, but maybe. So the best way to know for sure what you've got going is to have one of the forest health specialists, whoever happens to be your forest health specialist in the state, come out, grab a sample, and run it through our lab and test it. We can tell you for sure. So it is important to know, because that is, depending what is there, is going to impact your management into the future. If you know it's HRD and you know you cannot grow pine on that site anymore, that's going to change your thinking for where you're going to plant pine next, what you're going to plant in this spot next. And so it is important to know what the issue is. With our pockets, the management of those pockets, so if you've got, let's say some of these trees were dying, and we knew it was a pocket, say it's red pine pocket mortality, the management for those is to figure out where the pocket edges are, and then go out another 30 feet with your harvest and just take everything the next time that you're in doing a thinning of sorts. That cleans up the pocket. It allows you to capture the value of this wood before all these trees die, and it won't stop the fungus. So by going out an extra 30 feet, you have captured the value of the trees that you know will die in the next few years before you come back in for yet another thinning. With red pine, you guys are probably in that red pine on a rather regular basis, every 10 or 15 years. So you're in there regularly doing some sort of thinning or harvest, so you can clean up a pocket if you have a pocket. But again, it's important to know what that pocket is and to know whether you want to do stump treatments at the time of harvest. So those stump treatments are pretty important. And if you go on our forest health, our DNR Forest Health website, there's a button that you can click to get you to our HRD page. And then there's on the right hand side, there's various links to fact sheets, and there's a link to a map that will show you exactly where we know HRD is present. Now the caveat to that map is we don't do a formal survey around the whole state looking for HRD. So if you're getting ready to do a thinning in your red pine, and you go to that map and you're like, well, I'm a long ways away. I'm more than 25 miles away from a known HRD, but I have zero risk tolerance. I do not want to risk getting HRD. You might choose to treat those stumps anyway, even though you're a long ways away from the known locations, because we don't do a formal survey. If you happen to have HRD on your property and you're not a dot on the map, let us know so we can update that map. The dots do disappear when you zoom in, so that someone can't say, you have HRD. Ugh. So the dots do disappear so that people don't, hone in on the fact that you have HRD. But through no fault of your own, undoubtedly, HRD is just a fungus that we have in various parts of the state. And in fact, we have HRD about 10 miles away from here. So it's pretty close. So when he does a thinning, or even in a situation like he took out a couple of trees here for this driveway, he could have chosen to treat these stumps when he took these 2 trees out as well. If you're doing something very small like this, you might just use the 20 mule team borax like you use for laundry. That's a borate product and can be used on the stumps as well. But if you're doing a timber sale, there are processors there are operators that have things that can automatically spray the stumps as they are being cut. Very handy, because then you guys don't have to mess with a backpack sprayer or trying to find all those stumps after the processor has gone through and cut them. So if that's something that you're interested in with your next red pine thinning, definitely ask if you can have a logger come that can do that treatment as the trees are being cut. Yeah.
Is there an advantage to using that commercial borate versus 20 mule team borax, which is dirt cheap?
So yeah, it's a volume thing. If you're only doing a few trees, the 20 mule team borax is very easy for you to get a little bit of and do those stumps. If you're doing 40 acres, a liquid product is going to be the way to go. And the loggers that have equipment that can treat the stumps, they all need a liquid product. And the 20 mule team borax is not ever going to be a liquid product. So even if you put it in water, it doesn't really dissolve and become a good solution like that. So yeah, it's a volume thing.
I found that it does like to clog the sprayer up, unless you get it the right dilution.
Yep.
Do you have to have a certification to do that spraying?
If you're doing it for hire, so like if the logger is doing it on your property, they will be certified. They should be certified, yes, that is correct. They have to go through the training and get licensed and certified to be able to apply that. That's another good thing to ask, is just to make sure that the person coming on and doing that treatment is licensed and certified.
But if you're doing your own stumps?
You don't have to be. None of these products are restricted use. So if you're doing it yourself, you can just do it. You can buy the stuff online, either Rot Stop C or Cellutreat, and yeah, you can do it yourself. Any other questions right off about red pine?
No, the Phoenix Falls chapter toured the stand. That's probably fairly close here. Well, what's happened to that stand since we toured it 4 or 5 years ago?
So the stand that has HRD that's nearby here, when we first identified it, there was one pocket that we could identify that we found easily. When we looked throughout the stand, there were multiple areas of infection throughout that stand. So they went in and did a very heavy thinning, basically left what looks like a seed tree effectively, so just a couple of trees per acre, and that disease is still there. You can still find the fruiting bodies. They have not replanted the site, and pine is not really going to be able to grow on that site well at all into the future. There is some oak that's coming in, but yeah, that site is pretty well just kind of sitting there with just a few scattered trees on it, and that's it. So, and there have been other sites where HRD was found in a site and they basically cleared the site for a cornfield or a hayfield. So it can be kind of drastic, but that's the one that stays in the soil for decades.
Is HRD emerging? I mean, is it worse now than it was 20 years ago?
Yeah, so it was first found in the state about 40 years ago, and the more we look for it, the more we find it. But the bigger issue is that HRD is a problem in managed stands. So when you guys are out there doing the right thing, you're thinning your stands, that's the opportunity it needs to come in. So 60 years ago, people weren't always thinning their red pine as they should have. So there was a little bit less of a problem. And now we've created this by encouraging people to do the right thing and do management that you need to do in red pine. Unfortunately, this is a problem that we're starting to see now. So prevention is the way to go. Education, knowing that it's there is really important. So share with your neighbors if they don't know about HRD.
And finally, Linda, cutting during the winter, sub-freezing, is that still considered safe?
Yeah, yeah. So
If it's ever below freezing in the winter?
So right, I talked about spraying these stumps with a liquid. Well, it's hard to spray a liquid in the middle of a Wisconsin winter, most winters. So during the winter, we have a period of time when it's okay to not spray the stumps because quite frankly, it's just too cold to spray them. That does not necessarily mean that there are no spores floating around at that time of year. We can trap spores at that time of year. It's more of an operational thing. We recognize you can't spray a liquid in the middle of winter. And so there is that time period where the risk is pretty low that you would get infection if you're doing thinnings in the middle of winter, but there's still some risk there. So it's just an acknowledgement that you can't spray a liquid in the winter.
Can you use an antifreeze?
So yeah, can you use antifreeze? So you can use propylene glycol antifreeze to add to the mix, but unfortunately that only allows you to spray it down to about 20 degrees, and then it starts to gel, and you can't spray gel through a cutting bar.
Right.
So yeah, that will allow you to continue to use that spray product when you hit that freezing mark, but not below like 20 degrees. Wilt is relatively common in large part of the state. This map, all of the red counties are counties where oak wilt is kind of spread throughout the county. The counties in the north and over along the lake shore that are in white here, those counties oak wilt is much less common. So if you've got property there, you may not have oak wilt. Or it might be scattered in that county. Just a few areas have oak wilt. Up in this area, there's a lot of oak wilt. As you drive home today, if you're not from this area, as you drive home today, look for the dead trees. There's just a lot of oak wilt up here. And that's unfortunately how we see it occurring in other parts of the state where it's very sandy, very dry. Scrub oak is growing there. There's a lot of oak wilt in those spots. So we have a few of those around the state. There are other parts of the state where there's just not much oak wilt yet. In this northern part of the state, we are finding more and more oak wilt in those areas as the years go on. So it is still spreading in Wisconsin. It's not absolutely everywhere in the state yet. So you may have a stand where you have no oak wilt, and you're walking through it one day and you notice that, oh no, there's a tree that's dropping its leaves. Oaks that are infected with oak wilt as a brand new infection, and in order to do that, beetles have to bring in the fungus in the spring. But oaks that are infected with that brand new infection in the spring will start dropping their leaves that summer. And within 4 weeks of starting that process of dropping those leaves, 4 to 6 weeks, the tree will have dropped the vast majority of its leaves and it'll be dead. It's a fast disease. So from the time beetles can bring the fungus in the spring to the time the tree is dead is that one growing season. Once the fungus kills a tree, so the beetles bring the fungus in, tree dies, the fungus will move down the root, down into the root system, and then it starts to move outwards in the root system, and these oaks will all be root grafted to other nearby oaks. So all of these oaks in this area are sharing a root system, and the fungus can then move down into the root system and can move to neighboring trees and start to kill neighboring trees. And in that way, it just simply moves along until it runs out of oak, unless you do something about it. And we do have some pretty good management options now. I'm going to send around this sample. So this is a root graft from an oak And you can see that there were, so these were from two different trees. This was a root from one tree. This is a root from another tree. And you can see that they are truly root grafted together. And that's how the fungus can move through those grafted root systems. But if you want to stop oak wilt, let's say you don't have much oak wilt on your property and you notice one tree that's starting to wilt, or maybe you walk out and you notice two trees that have died. We do have some management options that might work for your property. There's a bunch of fact sheets over here that you guys will get to look through once we're done here, and you can pick up a bunch of different things depending what I talk about that actually interests you. There's probably a fact sheet over there. There is a fact sheet called Oak Wilt Management, and it's actually a 2-pager, but this document will walk you through some of the management options we have. You might have heard in the past about trenching for oak wilt, in which you would figure out which trees are directly root grafted to the dead and dying trees, and there's a way to do that with some measurements, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But you would figure out which ones are directly root grafted, and then you would trench outside of those trees to stop the fungus from being able to continue to spread. The reason you have to figure out which trees are directly root grafted to the dead and dying trees is because the fungus is somewhere in the root system underground. We just don't know exactly where it is. So we need to get ahead of it in order to stop it. So in this document, there's a table here that will tell you how to take the diameter of the dead and diseased trees, take the diameter of a live tree nearby, and the table will tell you if they're close enough to be directly root grafted. And then you know that the fungus is somewhere in that root system between this tree and that tree. And then your trench line would go outside of that. Unfortunately, we don't have any trenchers working in the state of Wisconsin anymore. At least not ones that want to work in the woods. They work along the roadsides laying line, but it's a lot different working in the woods. And so we don't have anyone to do that. So we needed some different management options. And in this document, the next management option is to rip the stumps out of the ground of all of those trees that are directly root grafted to the diseased ones. So again, you figure out which ones are directly root grafted, you cut them down, and you rip those stumps out. And there are landowners that have big equipment that can do this. And when I suggest this, they're like, oh yeah, sure, no problem, I can do that. And but not everyone has big equipment that can do that. So if that's something that you have access to, that may be an option for stopping oak wilt. Now, in this area, these trees, there's going to be a lot of trees that are directly root grafted to this diseased one. So all of these that are up in this area on this little hill are all going to be directly root grafted to this one. And just on the other side of my table, those trees are going to be directly root grafted to this. So you're going to be killing a number of trees, but if you have 40 acres of oak, killing these few trees to stop oak wilt is the way to go. And so uprooting may be an option. But let's say you don't have big equipment to be able to rip roots out. We have two options that utilize herbicides, and that's really, really practical for a lot of landowners. The one option is to do a girdle around the trees and then herbicide that girdle cut that you do with a chainsaw. It only has to go into the wood just a little ways. You're not cutting way into the tree, just a little ways. And then you treat that girdle with herbicide. Garlon 4 is the herbicide. The other option is to cut the tree down and treat the stump with herbicide. Both of those are designed to not only kill the top of the tree, which you're going to, but they need to try to kill the root system as well. We need to stop that root system from being functional enough that the fungus can keep moving through. And so those are good options, and we've got some good, we had a big scientific study looking at the girdle herbicide study, and if you have 4 or fewer diseased trees in your little pocket that you're working with, the success rate is like 89%. It's very, very high if you do the girdle and herbicide of all of those trees that are directly root grafted to these diseased trees. So that's pretty good. That's about the same success rate as trenching, and a whole lot easier for a landowner to do. So those are some options that you might be able to do on your property easily, relatively easily, if you have a little bit of oak wilt. Now, if you have enough oak wilt that you have more than one pocket of dying trees per, say, 5 acres, then we need to talk about some different things. Then we need to look at maybe some just forest management things. You're not treating those pockets, there's too much. But if you've just got a couple trees, or maybe a couple pockets in your 80 acres, yeah, let's talk about treating those, what you can do to stop those pockets. Because, you know, it is something that you can do something about. We have diseases that you can do nothing about. You know, I was talking about HRD. Once you've got it, there's nothing you can do. Absolutely nothing. But oak wilt is kind of exciting in that there's something you guys can do to stop an oak wilt pocket. The other exciting thing about oak wilt is if all these trees die from oak wilt, you can grow oak right back on this site. And that's really exciting in the insect and disease world because that doesn't always happen. Like I was talking with HRD, you can't grow pine on those sites anymore. But in the case of oak wilt, once these trees are dead from oak wilt and that diseased root system is starting to decay, and it's just going to die and not remain on the site anymore. So you can grow oak right back on this site. Additionally, if you have oak that are already growing in the understory from seed sources, those little oaks will not be root grafted to this bigger diseased root system. So you could leave those, and they will grow up, and they'll have to get their own infection, which they may at some point. But those little oaks, they're not going to be root grafted, so you can leave those. So there's options for oak wilt. It may look like it's the end of the world, all your oak is dying, life is miserable, but there's some really good options with oak wilt. So
if you girdle a healthy tree out there, will you kill that tree? You will.
Yep, and we need to do that to get ahead of the fungus so that we're killing the root system out there so the fungus can't just keep marching along through the root system from tree to tree to tree. Because eventually it'll just keep going until it runs out of oak. And that may be on your property, it may be on your neighbor's property, it may be 30 miles away. It'll just keep moving, slow but sure. So yeah, you need to get ahead of the fungus, purposefully kill some of these trees that look fine right now, but we know the fungus is in here somewhere, and we need to get ahead of it. So if you get to a point where you have oak wilt, or maybe you have some now, and you want to do a treatment, or you want to talk about treatment, get a hold of your forest health specialist. It may be me, it might be someone else, and we can come out and talk you through what it would look like. We can flag the trees that would have to be purposefully killed, and then you can get a better idea of what your options may be that would work well on your site.
So if you were to trench, how deep would you have to go? Because you can rent a trencher and they go like 36 inches down.
Right. And if you're going to trench, especially on sandy soils, you need to go 5 foot deep. Yeah. So,
That won't
right.
happen.
So like a ditch witch will go 36 inches, will go 3 feet. And if you're on super heavy clay soils, that might be fine. But if you're on anything besides really heavy clay, you really need to go down 5 feet because there will be roots that are down that deep. So, yeah. What's that?
I guess it won't work.
Oh, red versus white oak. Excellent, yes. So, something I should have pointed out. The biology of the disease, it kills trees in the red oak family really fast. Red oak family trees have points on their leaves. If you have white oaks, so the rounded leaf on the oaks, if you have white oaks, most of those are a little bit resistant. So our white oak, Quercus alba, is fairly resistant. Swamp white oak, which is also a type of white oak, that one is moderately resistant. And bur oak, another type of tree in the white oak family, is moderately resistant. So yeah, those trees, maybe a branch dies and it stops. Whereas with red oak, the whole darn tree goes, and it goes fast. So yeah, if you have white oak on your property, encourage that. There are certainly other issues that white oak can get, but as far as oak wilt is concerned, white oak, yeah, that's the way to go, is get a few of those going on your property, and then even if you've got a red oak that's dying from oak wilt, if it's right next to a white oak, the white oak should be fine.
And
So
that's the good
switching,
news, right?
switching,
What's that?
That's the only good news.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't come here to bring good news. I'm sorry, what?
so switching trees, if you have some healthy elm, you know, the American elm, they died off, what, 20 years ago or so, and the new seedlings are come up, can you treat those to be Dutch elm resistant?
So, sort of. So Dutch elm disease is difficult to treat because there's an insect and a fungus involved. So if you treat the tree to try and protect it from the insect coming in, which is what brings the fungus in the first place, the insect has to bore into the tree to get a dose of the chemical, and so it doesn't, that part of it does not work. You could treat the tree with a fungicide, and that requires injecting the tree. So you'd have to have a tree care company come out, or you'd have to learn how to use that injection equipment and purchase some. So you could inject with a fungicide. I think it has to be done every 2 years, as long as you want to keep that tree alive. So it's challenging to treat an elm for Dutch elm disease. So how many of you guys had significant spongy moth defoliation last year or this year? Couple? Okay. All right. Not bad. Not bad at all. So I'm going to send this around so that you can look at it more closely. But this is the kind of defoliation that spongy moth does. You can see that the leaves are eaten right down to the veins. There's not much left beyond the veins. And this tree did try and send out some new leaves after the initial leaves were eaten off this spring. So there are some leaves that look reasonably good on this tree, but these have come out recently. The tree had to send something out because spongy moth ate all of the other leaves off and just left those veins. So I'll send this around so you guys can take a little closer look at that. So spongy moth has been in outbreak mode in Wisconsin for about 3 years now, in various areas around the state. So not everywhere, but spongy moth, which used to be called gypsy moth, so you might know it by that name. Spongy moth is a non-native defoliator. It really likes oak and it really likes aspen, but it can feed on a wide variety of species. So in this particular area, we had an extremely high population of spongy moth last year and this year. Completely defoliated the trees. So if you look up at the trees, at these oak trees, you can easily see through their crowns. Their leaves look really lacy, much more lacy than an oak leaf should look like. So these trees have sent out additional leaves since this spring. And they've got to have something to get them through the summer. They can't just sit there with no leaves. So spongy moth can put a lot of stress on trees by eating all the leaves off like this. We had severe defoliation this year, which is one major stress on these trees. We had severe defoliation last year, which is a second major stress on these trees. And last year was a dry, droughty year, which I've already talked a little bit about with pine issues. So we have 3 major stressors hitting these trees that they have not had a chance to recover from yet. That's a problem. And we did start to see a little bit of mortality this year in some of our oaks, because they're just under so much stress. And with oak trees, we have a native insect called two-lined chestnut borer, and there is a fact sheet here that you guys can grab if you're interested after we're done talking. Two-lined chestnut borer, which will attack oak trees that are under stress. It starts attacking at the top of the tree, and I'll send this around because it shows the beetle, which is really quite small. But it also shows how the trees will die from the top down. I'll send that around for you. But two-lined chestnut borer starts to attack at the top of the tree, kills those branches at the top of the tree this year, let's say. Then next year, it will kill some lower branches, and after that, the tree is pretty much dead. So it takes a couple of years for two-line chestnut borer to kill these stressed oaks, but that's what we're going to see over the next couple years, because these trees were stressed last year and this year, and trees don't recover just like that from stressors. They take some time. So it's not really a joke, it's a semi-joke, but the trees are either going to take 2 years to die or they're going to take 2 years to recover. So you have to give them time to either die or recover from serious stressors like this, because two-line chestnut borer takes some time to kill the trees. The other thing that we may see in areas like this is armillaria root disease moving in. This is not a particularly aggressive root disease, not like HRD like we were talking. Armillaria root disease will attack trees that are under stress. Thank you. And it starts out at the edges of the root system and slowly works its way towards the tree that it's attacking. And so over the course of maybe 2 or 3 years, it will work its way to a tree and kill the tree. So again, over the next 2 or 3 years, we may see trees that are dying from armillaria root disease. So even though the spongy moth stress, the defoliation occurred this year and last year, we're going to see some tree mortality over the next few years. So one of the good things about spongy moth right now is that we had so much moisture this year in the spring that it really promoted a fungal disease and a viral disease that kill the caterpillars. So if you guys want to come up here and look a little more closely at this tree, I have pointed out a few dead caterpillars. So from here, you can't see the dead caterpillars. So if you want to see them, you can come on up. There's some that are hanging head down. There's some that are hanging in an upside down V shape. Any of the ones in the upside down V shape are killed by the virus. Any of them hanging head down are killed by the fungus. And if you look on any of the oak trees, you should be able to find some of these. So yeah, there's lots of them on this tree that are dead. We had about 90% mortality. This is a V-shaped one killed by the virus, and this one's killed by the fungus. Yeah. So we had about 90% mortality of the caterpillars. So here's a dead V-shaped one. This year, 90% mortality means we've probably got a solid population collapse now, and we probably won't see any defoliation next year, or it'll be very minimal, because there are some caterpillars that survived and they were able to pupate, and the moths emerged and they mated and they laid eggs. So there will be some next year, but this is a pretty good collapse of the population to get 90% mortality. So that was really exciting. The control options for spongy moth on a forest level are pretty limited. So Mother Nature often is the one that we're relying on to help us out. And this year, Mother Nature came through with nice moisture this spring, really promoted that fungal disease. And like I said, if you look at any of the oaks as you're walking around the property, you'll probably see some dead caterpillars, but you have to get up close to really notice them. So anyway, that was an exciting thing about spongy moth. But there is a document over here about forest management related to spongy moth. And the document is old and needs to be updated, but the gist is you recognize that your trees are under a lot of stress from spongy moth. Give it time to recover. Give your stand time to recover before you go in and do forest management that could put additional stress on your stand. So if you're doing a clear cut to regenerate scrub oak, northern pin oak, that's okay. You can do that right now while the trees are stressed. But if you're going to go in and do a thinning, let's say you've got some northern red oak and you're going to go in and do a thinning, the thinning operation is going to put a little bit more stress on your trees. And remember, these trees have 3 major stressors already piled on them. Severe defoliation this year and last year and a drought. You don't want to lump one more on And then have two-line chestnut borer moving into these trees and killing them, or armillary root disease moving into these trees and killing them. Okay, the last thing I want to touch on, because you're going to see this as you go throughout the property, is emerald ash borer. How many of you guys have emerald ash borer already killing trees on your property? Okay, quite a few, about half-ish. Okay, all right. Emerald ash borer is killing trees on this property, and as you take your wagon ride through, you will pass several low areas where almost all the ash are dead or really severely declining. So watch for that. That's emerald ash borer, and with emerald ash borer, the larvae bore underneath the bark in a winding gallery, and I'll pass this around so you can see that. It's just a nice winding gallery. The larvae aren't very big, and they're under the bark, so I'll pass this around so you can see how big they're not, but they can do a lot of damage under there. When you are driving around, the trees that are infested with emerald ash borer will often have the upper portions of the tree, the outer bark is going to be stripped off. They will be almost a blonde color on the bark because the woodpeckers remove those outer layers of bark so they can punch through the bark and pluck out those tasty larvae. So the woodpeckers are doing all of that damage on those trees. And as you drive around the property, you will see that on those trees. So keep an eye out for that. There is a little bit of positive information out on emerald ash borer. There's not much. Most of the emerald ash or most of the ash are going to die from emerald ash borer attack. Like 99% of the ash are going to die from emerald ash borer attack. But on the rare occasion that there is a tree that has a little bit of resistance, they will survive that initial attack of emerald ash borer as the population first explodes in an area. In this area, emerald ash borer is it's exploding right now. In the southern half of the state, emerald ash borer has been there for a lot longer, and your trees may already be dead if you own property in the southern part of the state. In those areas where emerald ash borer has already killed most of the ash, that's where you can look for trees that are still alive and still look pretty good. And if you happen to have any of those, let us know. There are certainly trees that are going to be coming up in the understory since the large trees were killed, but if you've got a tree that was around when all the rest of your trees were killed, and that tree is still alive, let us know. We've got researchers looking at those trees and trying to breed lingering trees with lingering trees to make more resistant trees so that we can then eventually try and get ash back out on the landscape with some level of resistance. The number of trees that are lingering ash that have some level of resistance is like 0.5%. So if you don't have any on your property, that's okay. That's sort of to be expected. But somewhere out there, there's going to be an ash that still looks pretty good when all the other ash are killed.